Hello, geometry students. So today we are going to continue our study of trigonometry, and we are going to find missing sides and missing angles in a right triangle. Again, we're going to be using our trig ratios, one of the three: sine, cosine, or tangent. So what we're going to do, if you remember the last lesson, we talked about, how to identify the three sides, which trig ratio to use depending on which two sides you're given, or how to find, like, for example, the cosine of an angle, which two sides are you focused on. And then we practice using our calculator with the trig ratios. So what we're going to do today, like I said, is find missing sides and missing angles. So if I look at this first example, so this says sides here, so this particular column here focuses on sides. So the first one, it says to find x. So again, what you want to do first is to identify the acute angle in the picture. That is this 20-degree angle, which is angle C. And let's also identify the sides that we know. So across from it, this 4 is going to be the opposite. So I'm going to put a little O next to that. And then remember, X is going to be your hypotenuse. It's always the side across from your right angle. So if I have O and H, so again, if we think about SOHCAHTOA, which trig ratio, which of the three uses opposite and hypotenuse? O and H. O and H here is S4 sine. So we're going to write an equation. So we're going to say the sine of my angle, which is 20 degrees. And again, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So the opposite side is 4. The hypotenuse is x. Okay, this is when we're going to grab our calculator. So we practiced the other day trying to figure out what is the sine of an angle. So I'm going to type in sine, and the sine is 20 degrees, the sine of 20 degrees. Again, we're going to keep 4 places after the decimal, so it's 0.3420. So we're going to write 0.3420 equals 4 over x. So now I need to solve this equation for x. So it's kind of like an algebra problem. So what I would recommend doing, so that we're just consistent for all our problems, is put your decimal over 1 and then do cross products. So we're going to have 0.3420x equals, and then 1 times 4 is 4. So if I continue solving for x, I'm going to divide both sides by that decimal, 0.3420. Okay, so if I grab my calculator and I take 4 divided by 0.3420, and let's say I'm going to round to the nearest tenth, my answer would be 11 point, and I'm going to round this up to 7. So again, I would say my missing side, or my hypotenuse, is 11.7 units long. Okay? And that's how you proceed. You identify the angle that you're talking about, the acute angle. You identify which trig ratio you should be using. You write an equation, and then you solve for your variable. So if I look at the second one here, the acute angle in my picture is 65 degrees. So next I want to identify the sides. The 22 here is my hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. The side here that's x is the adjacent because, again, it's the side next to the acute angle that's not the hypotenuse. So if I have adjacent and hypotenuse, okay, I got to stop and think, which trig ratio should I be using? Again, I'm looking for A and H. So it's not sine, that's opposite and hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent and hypotenuse, A and H. So I'm going to use C for cosine. So my equation is going to look something like the cosine, and then I'm going to put my angle, which is 65. And cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so I'm going to put x over 22. So again, next I'm going to grab my calculator. I want to type in the cosine of 65. And again, I'm going to keep 4 places after the decimal. So it looks like I'm going to have 0.4226. So 0.4226 equals x over 22. So again, if I'm going to solve for x, just like I did in the previous problem, I'm going to put the decimal over 1 and do cross products. So 1 times x is x, and then I'm going to take 0.4226 times 22, And if I again round to the nearest tenth, that's going to be 9.3. So my x value in this problem is about 9.3. Okay, so we did one with sine, we did one with cosine. Let's look at my third one here. So again, I want to identify the acute angle that I know or that I'm trying to find, and in this problem, it is 37 degrees. So next, I want to identify the sides in the picture. I don't have the hypotenuse, that's again the one across from the right angle. The side of 15 here is the opposite because it's across from the acute angle. And the side here that's x is the adjacent because it's the side next to the angle that's not the hypotenuse. So if I am trying to pick which trig ratio I should be using if I have opposite and adjacent, that's O and A. So again, that's O and H, cosine is A and H. Tangent is O and A, opposite over adjacent. So I'm going to say the tangent of my acute angle, which is 37 degrees, again, that equals opposite, which is 15 over adjacent, which is x. So again, I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to type in the tangent of 37. And if I keep 4 places after the decimal, we have 0.753, and we're going to round that to 6. So 0.7536 equals 15 over x. And just like in the previous 2 problems, we're going to put the decimal over 1 and then do cross products. So I'm going to have 0.7536x equals 1 times 15, which is 15. And then to finish solving for x, I'm going to divide both sides by that decimal, 0.7536. And just like the previous problems, we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So if I take 15 and divide it by 0.7536, I get an answer. You can see there, to nearest tenth would be 19.9. So again, what this is telling me is that my adjacent side down here is actually going to be 19.9 units long. Okay, so we did one of each where we were trying to find sides. And then we're going to do one more of each where we're trying to find, like it says at the top, now we're going to find the angle. So, just like in the previous problems, we're going to, in this case, identify the acute angle that I want to find. That is this one here. It's the one that has theta. And remember from the previous lesson, theta is just a variable for an angle. I mean, you could have an x there. That is not wrong, but it's a commonly used variable for an angle. So with respect to this angle, the 10 over here is the opposite. It's the one across from your acute angle. And then the other one in the picture is 20. That's the hypotenuse because it's the one across from your right angle. So again, if I'm trying to use opposite and hypotenuse, O and H, I got to think which trig ratio do I pick? I should be picking sine because sine uses O and H, opposite over hypotenuse. So the way I'm going to write it, I'm going to put the sine of theta equals opposite, which is 10, over hypotenuse, which is 20. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is what is 10 divided by 20? Hopefully you do not need a calculator. If you do, use it. But 10 divided by 20 is 0.5. So to find the angle, we're going to do the inverse sine of 0.5. So remember from the previous lesson, to do that, you most likely have to hit a shift or second. And it should look like that in the screen. It looks like sine to the negative first. And then you're going to type in the decimal, 0.5, and it tells me the answer is 30. So in this first problem, my angle is 30 degrees. And that was an exact answer. Most of the time with angles, we want to round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so let's take a look at the second one. Again, I want to find theta. Theta is an angle, so I'm going to circle the acute angle in the picture. I'm going to identify the sides that I know. 7 is your hypotenuse because, again, it's across from your right angle. The side of 5 is your adjacent. It's the side next to your angle that's not the hypotenuse. So again, if I think back to which trig ratio do I use if I have adjacent and hypotenuse, A and H. Again, it's not sine. Sine uses O and H. Cosine uses adjacent and hypotenuse, A and H. So to write my equation, I'm going to say the cosine of theta, and my adjacent is 5, and the hypotenuse is 7. So next, I'm going to take my calculator, and I'm going to take 5 divided by 7. and I get 4 places after the decimal, 0.7143. So to find my angle, I'm going to do the inverse cosine of 0.7143. So again, I'm going to hit second and then cosine or shift cosine on your calculator possibly, and type in the decimal 0.7143. And if I'm going to round to the nearest degree, that would be 44, because 0.4 means it's going to stay the same. So my angle to the nearest degree would be about 44 degrees. Okay, so let's do one more. So again, we're going to find theta. So I'm going to identify theta in the picture. That is this acute angle at the top here. So if I identify my sides that I know about the picture, the 3 is the opposite. It's the one across from your acute angle. And 4 is your adjacent. It's the one next to your acute angle that's not the hypotenuse. So if I am trying to use opposite and adjacent to help me find my angle, think about which one of the 3 trig ratios uses opposite and adjacent. O and A is tangent. So my equation is going to be something like the tangent of theta equals 3 over 4. So next, I'm going to divide or take 3 divided by 4. If you need a calculator, go ahead. If you don't, you should know 3/4 is 0.75. So again, to find my angle, since I'm using tangent, I'm going to do the inverse tangent of 0.75. So I'm going to hit second, tan, and then 0.75. And if I'm going to round to the nearest degree, it's 0.8, so I'm going to round this up to 37 degrees. So again, your focus for today is going to be finding missing sides or missing angles. If you have any questions, please let me know. Bye.